Buongiorno, everybody. I'm Joshua Orro, the Mustang Prince, and welcome to Mustang Prince Orro Reports. You know, I was originally planning to do this video next year, but because this is pretty much a special occasion, today I'd like to talk about Pinocchio again. Now, for those who haven't been following me lately, I blogged Walt Disney's animated Pinocchio film from 1940, which was his second full-length animated feature film. And ever since my childhood, I still stand by that it's an animated classic, despite World War II causing it to be a box office bomb at the time. And there were some dark moments. However, there are several reasons why I still love it. For example, the story is set in my father's home country, since the story was originally written by Carlo Collodi, along with several great characters and classic songs. And believe you me, this movie influenced me to be a brave, honest, and unselfish person. Plus, the movie influenced a classic ride that's been at Disneyland ever since the 1980s, along with 2 explorable worlds and a boss in the Kingdom Hearts game series. Anyway, before 2022 began, I heard that Pinocchio would become pretty popular due to a few film adaptations. For example, there was that animated True Story adaptation which starred Pauly Shore, which I heard wasn't very good, and I agree with Isaac the Media Hunter's review from a couple months ago. And I heard that Guillermo del Toro's stop-motion adaptation should be getting released on Netflix this coming December. And to me, this adaptation looks pretty interesting and promising. However, what I'll be blogging today will be a recent live-action adaptation released by Disney. But is it as good as Walt Disney's animated version? Well, let's take a look and find out. Released to Disney Plus on September 8th, 2022, the movie is Pinocchio 2022. And now, on for the plot of the movie. Sweet elderly woodcarver Geppetto lives along with his pets and his creations, including a wooden puppet he calls Pinocchio. Before falling asleep one night, he makes a wish upon a star, and then a magical fairy soon appears and grants Pinocchio life and a voice, and she appoints the jaunty insect Jiminy Cricket to be his conscience and guide. It's up to Pinocchio to prove himself worthy of becoming a full-fledged human boy. Geppetto loves Pinocchio as a son, but on the day that he sends the boy off to school, Pinocchio is tempted by dishonest players with promises of fame and fortune and imprisoned as an act in a traveling puppet show. From there, he continues to follow temptation into other dangerous situations that put his life and that of his father in jeopardy. So, what do I personally think of this version? Well, in my opinion, it was actually pretty good. It was a lot of fun, charming, and very nostalgic. And I mean it. Flip those haters. But now, let's move on to Mustang notes. In 1985, Jim Henson and director Steve Barron approached Walt Disney Pictures with the idea of a live-action version of Pinocchio, but unfortunately Disney turned down the project. However, Barron still managed to make The Adventures of Pinocchio in 1996, distributed by New Line Cinema. On April 8, 2015, it was announced that Walt Disney Pictures was developing a live-action adaptation of the 1940s animated Pinocchio film, with Peter Hedges writing the film's script. But on May 22, 2017, Chris Weitz replaced Hedges as screenwriter and served as an executive producer, while Sam Mendes was in talks to direct the project. Sadly, on November 13, 2017, Mendes stepped down as director. On February 20th, 2018, it was announced that Paul King was set to direct the film, and production was expected to begin in late 2018. Though Jack Horn was announced to be rewriting Weitz' script, Weitz revealed on August 21st, 2018, that the script was still being developed, as well as that production was set to take place in England and in Italy during 2019. In November 2018, Simon Farabee was reported to have worked on a new draft for the film. However, on January 13th, 2019, it was reported that King left the film due to family reasons, while Disney was announced to be searching for a new director for the project. Finally, on January 24, 2020, it was confirmed that Robert Zemeckis would direct the movie and write a new script with Weitz. It was also reported that Jack Remke and Jackie Levine were hired to serve as executive producers. Principal photography began on March 17, 2021 in Cardington Film Studios in England, and the filming was completed in April 2021. Man, that's pretty quick if you ask me. The full animation and visual effects were provided by Moving Picture Company, while DNEG contributed a part of the virtual production. Now, before I continue, I must let everybody know that this is not Disney's first time adapting Pinocchio into live action. I mean, back in 2000, Disney made a direct-to-television musical called Geppetto starring Drew Carey, which I managed to watch on YouTube several years ago. And to me, while it doesn't really hold a candle to the animated movie, I thought it was pretty charming and pretty funny at times. And I also find it interesting that Seth Atkins got to be Pinocchio twice in his life. Once in Geppetto, and the second time in Kingdom Hearts 2 years later. Also, this is the third live-action Disney remake that was released primarily to Disney+. The previous two being Lady and the Tramp in 2019 and Mulan in 2020. Plus, this new adaptation of Pinocchio is Robert Zemeckis' first time working with Disney again since Mars Needs Moms back in 2011, which ended up destroying his motion capture studio, Image Movers Digital. Anyway, to me, compared to its 1940s animated counterpart, this version of Pinocchio was pretty interesting. Firstly, I like how the film crew made the Italian village, and I think Geppetto's workshop looks very creative, especially with his clocks referencing several Disney films. I also like the part where Pinocchio goes to school, but unfortunately his teacher kicks him out on account of being made of wood, which I thought was very racist. The scene where Pinocchio is locked in a cage in Stromboli's wagon kind of felt reminiscent to a similar scene in Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance.
My nose! What's happened?
There. You see where those tall tales will get you?
And ever since the early 2000s, every time Pinocchio told a lie, I always narrowed my eyes and facepalmed myself. But then, I smiled and laughed when it was revealed that Pinocchio was only lying just so that his nose could reach the key, which kind of reminded me of a scene from Shrek 2. Plus, I think Pleasure Island is the same cursed island amusement park where disobedient children are free to do whatever they please, such as play pool, some amusement park rides, get free food, drink root beer, wreck things, pull off dangerous pranks, shoplift, and in the end, make jack-o'-mules out of themselves, literally. Thankfully, I'm glad that Tobacco Road and the cigars are not featured in this version of Pleasure Island, and I'm glad that Pinocchio does not get high from that, since smoking is very bad for your health, especially with what happened to Walt years ago. And we should all thank the Walt Disney Company from prohibiting smoking cigars, cigarettes, marijuana, drugs, and tobacco in their movies ever since 2015. Also, believe me when I say that it was very, very hard for me to get my dad to stop smoking during the year 2003. Luckily, I succeeded by taking him with me to scout camp on Catalina, with Troop 604. Also, I like that the movie features the classic songs from the original, like the Disney anthem When You Wish Upon a Star, which also plays during the beginning and sung by the Blue Fairy, Hi Diddle Dee Dee, aka An Actor's Life for Me, which is sung by Honest John Worthington Foulfellow and Gideon, and I've Got No Strings, sung by Pinocchio. However, songs like Little Wooden Head and Give a Little Whistle are sadly cut from this version. But on the positive side, this version features 4 new songs. For example, there's When He Was Here With Me and Pinocchio Pinocchio, sung by Geppetto, I Will Always Dance, sung by Fabiana and Sabina, and The Coachman to Pleasure Island, sung by the evil Coachman. And all these songs were written by Alan Silvestri and Gled Ballard. Now the last thing to talk about is Monstro. Now, as I stated in my blog from 2015, in the original book by Carlo Collodi, the main character and his father get swallowed by a giant sea creature known as the Terrible Dogfish. However, in this remake, instead of being a sperm whale like in the original 1940s animated film, Monstro is reimagined as an enormous sea monster, appearing as a cross between a humpback whale, a giant squid, a shark, and a mosasaurus, displaying a whale-like body, octopus-like tentacles, large fins on top of his head, shark-like gills and teeth, and a mosasaurus-like snout. And I thought the part where Pinocchio and Geppetto escape from his mouth by starting a fire to make him sneeze was very clever and brave, and I thought the chase scene was both epic and intense. And now, let's move on to the cast. Our main character, Pinocchio, is voiced by Benjamin Evan Ainsworth, who was previously in another Disney Plus original film, Flora and Ulysses. To me, this version of Pinocchio is almost exactly like his 1940 counterpart. For example, his design looks pretty much identical to the way Milt Kahl drew him. Plus, I think Benjamin's voice sounds almost exactly like Pinocchio's first voice actor, the late Dickie Jones. And I think his cover of I've Got No Strings is absolutely sensational, and way better than Ultron's version from Avengers Age of Ultron. Also, while Pinocchio starts out very mischievous, gullible, and overtrusting, which often unintentionally gets him into trouble, I like that throughout the movie, Pinocchio gains a good sense of right and wrong, kind of like how he was while meeting Riku in Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance. I also like the scene where Pinocchio's donkey ears and tail disappear when he decides to save his father, and where he tells Geppetto all the things that happened to him. And I thought the coolest moment was how fast Pinocchio can swim by propelling his feet like a motorboat while he and Geppetto were trying to escape from Monstro. Also, does anyone remember the scene where Pinocchio's finger catches fire in the original film? Well, in this movie that happens, but also in a couple scenes, Pinocchio's feet catches fire too. One time while he was dancing too fast on stage, and the other time was when he was trying to start a fire inside Monstro's belly. Next we have Jiminy Cricket, voiced by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, whom was in Angels in the Outfield, Halloween H2O, Treasure Planet, and Hayao Miyazaki's The Wind Rises. To me, I still think Jiminy Cricket is a legendary recurring Disney mascot, a wonderful chronicler in the Kingdom Hearts games, and a great mentor character while guiding Pinocchio on the path to becoming a real boy. Plus, Joseph's voice as Jiminy almost reminds me of his first voice actor, Cliff Edwards, even though Eddie Carroll will always be the Jiminy of my childhood. Anyway, I like that Jiminy serves as the movie's narrator, and I like the scenes where he saves Pinocchio from Stromboli's wagon, and where he discovers the Coachman's evil scheme to sell all the children who got turned into donkeys to the salt mines after being knocked into the gutter. Next is Pinocchio's father, Geppetto, played by Academy Award-winning actor Tom Hanks. Best known for being in films like Forrest Gump, Castaway, the Toy Story quadrilogy, The Polar Express, and just recently, he played Elvis Presley's manager in the 2022 Elvis movie. But I'll get to that film soon enough. Anyway, like in the original film, Geppetto is a kind old wood carver and clockmaker, and I like that he's somewhat of a saint due to him spending the majority of his life selflessly bringing joy to others. And I think all his toys, music boxes, and clocks are very creative. Plus, I think Tom Hanks pulls off his role as Geppetto with flying colors, and I found it very special and emotional that he made Pinocchio in the memory of his late son. Also, I thought Geppetto made quite a sacrifice when he had to sell all his clocks just to purchase a boat to find his son at sea. Plus, I also find it pretty interesting that Geppetto actually interacts with Jiminy Cricket in this version compared to the animated film. As for his pets, Figaro and Cleo, well, I think Figaro is a very adorable and cuddly cat, and Cleo is still a beautiful goldfish and quite the flirter. Next we come to the beautiful Blue Fairy, played by Cynthia Erivo, whom will be playing Elphaba in the upcoming film adaptation of Wicked. Like in the original film, the Blue Fairy is a magical being who transforms Pinocchio into a living wooden boy and tells him that in order for him to become a real boy, he must prove himself brave, honest, and unselfish, and learn the difference between right and wrong. Plus, I think Cynthia's cover of When You Wish Upon a Star is simply lovely. Sadly, unlike in the original, the Blue Fairy doesn't get as much screen time. But on the other hand, it's not really that big a deal though. And now let's talk about the new characters, starting with Sophia, a garbage-eating seagull voiced by Lorraine Bracco, who you might remember from Goodfellas. To me, Sophia seems like a pretty decent supporting character. While she doesn't really appear as often, I like the scene where she gave Jiminy Cricket an airlift to find Pinocchio in the village, where she gave Geppetto a flyer of Pleasure Island to let him know where Pinocchio is, and the scene where she pulls a rope for Pinocchio to hold out to sea in order to find Geppetto water ski styled. Next we have Fabiana, played by Cayenne Lemaya, and her marionette puppet Sabina, voiced by Jaquita Tale. I hope I'm pronouncing them right. Now, these two would have to be my favorite new characters. Despite working for Stromboli, I think Fabiana is a very sweet person, and I'd really feel bad that she has a prosthetic leg. And I think Sabina is very beautiful, and I like the part where she got Pinocchio's nose unstuck from the stage. Plus, I think her friendship bond with Pinocchio kind of make me think of Twinkle from the Emperor of the Night movie. Also to note, after Stromboli was arrested, Fabiana and Sabina have taken over his puppet show, renaming it as the Marionette Family Theater. Next we come to the sly fox, Honest John Worthington Foulfellow, voiced by Keegan-Michael Key, and his crafty mute cat sidekick Gideon. To me, these two are still the same sneaky con artists that they were in the original film. However, the only time we ever see them in this version is in the village where they convince Pinocchio to become a famous actor by joining Stromboli's show. Also, I thought the part where they trapped Jiminy Cricket in a pickle jar was really nasty. Next we have the Great Stromboli, played by Giuseppe Battistone. Now, this version of Stromboli is arguably less sinister than his animated counterpart. While he still locks Pinocchio up in a bird cage, he makes no threat to turn him into firewood once Pinocchio outgrows his use. And he even tries to cheer up Pinocchio when he tells him to get ready for a show in the Italian city of Siena. Despite this, he is still pretty malicious as he tears open an emotional wound on Pinocchio by sadistically stating that parents want a real child, not a puppet one. Plus, he proves to be a rather cruel boss to the people in his payroll, namely Fabiana and her puppet Sabina, as he yells at them for making a show in his caravan for free. Also, unlike his animated counterpart, Stromboli gets arrested by the Carabinieri thanks to his mistreated and exploited employees. Next we come to the Coachman, the sly and wicked owner of Pleasure Island, played by Luke Evans, who previously played Gaston in the 2017 Beauty and the Beast remake. Like in the original, this guy collects disobedient kids to take to Pleasure Island so that they can mess around and become literal donkeys to sell to the salt mines. However, in this version, he doesn't just collect bad boys, he also collects bad girls too. Plus, since we don't have the Red Lobster inn scene where he makes that disturbing demonic face, ugh, the first time we ever see the Coachman is when he snatches Pinocchio not long after escaping from Stromboli. Also, in my opinion, like Mr. Dark from Something Wicked This Way Comes, I find the Coachman to be a very notorious and sadistic character, and I find it very twisted that his goons in this version are portrayed as fog-like beings. Plus, I thought the part where the Coachman chases Pinocchio and Jiminy down was very thrilling, and I thought his villain song felt like a song that would come from the Oliver stage musical. The last character to talk about is Lampwick, played by Llewyn Lloyd, whom was in the 2019 Judy film. In this version, Lampwick is the one who drags Pinocchio on the ride to Pleasure Island when Pinocchio was on the crossroads trying to get home after escaping from Stromboli. Compared to his animated counterpart, this Lampwick is a lot more meaner to Pinocchio as he constantly mocks Pinocchio for having a conscience. Plus, his accent sounds like a kid from New York. However, like his animated version, Lampwick transforms into a donkey like the other children, which I find is still the scariest part of the whole movie. However, I liked the part where Donkey Lampwick kicks the pool table to stall the Coachman in order to buy Pinocchio enough time to escape, which I kind of consider his minor redeeming moment. And now on to my final words. Overall, Pinocchio 2022 was a very nostalgic Disney remake. It included several memorable moments while also adding in some new stuff, as well as altering a few things, some of which being stuff that Disney will never allow anymore, like kids smoking or drinking alcohol. The old songs are classical, while some of the new ones are nice and pretty catchy to listen to. The characters are wonderful, and the new characters are pretty good, like Sophia, Fabiana, and Sabina, and the acting is absolutely spot on. However, I do have a couple nitpicks. One being a horse poop scene, and some parts of the film being a bit rushed. But still, I don't care what anyone says. I consider it a movie that everybody should check out on Disney Plus if they still have fresh and fond childhood memories from the original animated film. And I just hope it gets a home media release someday. As for my rating, I'll give this movie an 82% out of 100. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to join me for my next vlog. Mustang Power. And remember, folks, always let your conscience be your guide.